This is the Under Segovia Show.
Hey everyone, it's Andres, and on today's episode, I am joined by actor Siaka Massaquoi. He's made guest appearances on shows like NCSI Los Angeles, Lethal Weapon, and SWAT, but he's probably best known for his turn as Steve in the Babylon Bees sketch comedy series, Californians Move To Texas. He's also played Black Jeremy in a Razor commercial, and he's also starred in the film Lady Ballers. So I asked him to come on the program to talk about, well, the entertainment space as a whole, but we got started off by talking about comic books and our shared love for them, Marvel, DC being better, of course, and just all around like the Christian space in trying to create entertainment too, and how we can use that to spread the gospel. And of course, addressing some controversies that have come about in these spaces. But we got into this wide-ranging, in-depth conversation about all that and more. And joining me now is actor Siaka Massaquoi. It's so good to talk to you finally in person. I know we shared some stuff that connected to social media from Parler and X. I don't think Instagram yet, but I'm sure we'll fix that.
Not yet. Yeah. Now I'm gonna have to follow you and all that good stuff.
Right on. But I'm glad you shared that the whole comic book stuff because
you like this too.
Yeah, I don't have a bobblehead. I have a Funko Pop, and it's sitting on my desk at my house. So I try to deck the stuff out behind me with. You got Zod. Oh, no, that's Punisher. I thought that was Zod. But
that was the Punisher. Yeah, I got the Punisher, got Daredevil, and standing between them is our president. Yeah. So I'm as I try to show, I'm a bigger dork than maybe I may look like, or I should say geek, because dorks are some of them. I'm a bigger geek than what it may show. So
someone asked me if I'm a nerd or a geek, and I'll say I'm a geek. I'm not quite a nerd. I'm not gonna. Okay, fine. I do have some nerd battles. Like, okay, look, because someone asked me, it's like, who would win, Batman and Iron Man? I'm like, are you kidding me? Batman would have hacked Jarvis long before Iron Man could get the suit on.
Long time ago,
right? Yeah,
long time ago.
For understanding that.
Oh yeah, dude. Batman with prep time is like they always say in comics that's the ultimate, man. You give him prep time. Dude, I got sitting right on my desk. Gray Hulk versus Green Hulk. I actually have I don't have it up here, but in 2004, my buddy who was personal training at this gym was working with this producer who does animation, and I got to take a tour of the animation studio, and in there was I forgot, his name off the top of my head, but he created the Gray Hulk, and in a sitting he just drew him out for me, and so I have that sketch in I have that in there, dude. I'm just and so because we moved only a few months ago and we're still fixing the office. So I have like a bunch of my comics just sitting here next to me right now. Like not making it look like I'm that much of let's see here. I got some ones that are completely like I used to collect hard. I used to be a nerd about it.
Yeah.
Like what's Soul Saga? Nobody knows what that is. That's like those old one, Warlands. Like this is such an old one, but this is from like 94.
94, huh?
Yeah, they got some. So I was really into just collecting any and all types of comics back in the day, just because I love the medium, So yeah,
same here, and I get to share some stuff that I haven't shared with anybody else, just because we're touching on that subject. So anybody that's checked some of my older videos is going to see an entirely different setup, and then the evolution of my studio and this and that. I've always wanted it to tell a story of me without having to say anything, and your reaction when you saw it, that's kind of what I've been going for. Like over to my right, this bottom shelf here is my works. So I'm an author and I have a romantic comedy series. I told this before to my audience before, but it's supposed to be I'm telling it through a third party character, telling the story of how I met my wife. And the more I dove into it, the more I realized I got to go way back. So I went way back and tried to tell the story of how God worked in me to get me to where I was to be ready for my wife. So I was telling it through that story, and it's I saw my wife. She's Taiwanese, but some people confuse her for Korean because she likes Korean food. She watches Korean drama. Right. She listens to K-pop. It's like
and she speaks Korean. Like I don't know why. Everyone thinks she's Korean because she does everything Korean, but she's not.
I wonder why.
There it is.
We go to a Korean restaurant. They're trying to talk to her, and she's looking at them with that face. It's like, honey, are you trying to tell me something that I don't know?
You got to stop listening to K-pop, girl. Like they can tell.
Yeah. Then she shows
They
up
can
doing
tell.
this. I'm like, what's this? It's like, oh, this is a heart. A heart. The flip is that, and sure enough, it was like these Korean actresses were doing this thing, whatever. Like, oh, well, there it is. So,
I used to watch K-pop a lot too. Like probably like 8-9 years ago. I got caught up in the K-pop world for a while. I actually was living in Koreatown in LA, and K-pop. I don't know how it came across my feeds or something, but I just got so enthralled with the art of K-pop and what it looks like, and like it's like the same thing that happened with me in Bollywood movies. Like they got into the dance scene in the middle of a serious movie. I'm just like, what's this is amazing, So I became a big fan.
It went next level, and then that's why RRR took the world by storm. I haven't seen it on purpose, but I've seen enough of it. I'm like, okay, that's I don't understand how these two guys don't know one another. We're able to figure out how to do that one trick at the bridge sequence with just hand motions. But hey, there maybe telepathy. I don't know.
The talent, man. That's that K-pop talent. That's what it is. I think that's part of the whole thing.
Yeah, but then my wife showed me, like, I really want to watch this K-drama with you. It's like, oh, what is it? It's My Love from Another Star. Depending on how it's translated, it's either My Love from Another Star or You Came from Another Star, things like that. But the point is, it's an alien dude that landed in the 1500s, and coincidentally, he's Korean, and he lands in like the old Korean dynasty. So he's immortal, so he can live all those experiences. So he was able to invest in real estate very, very early, and he always kept like a low profile. But the whole I guess the driving force of the plot was he's been waiting for this asteroid. It's disguised as an asteroid, but it's his ship to go back home. And he's made no human connections because of trauma that he had when he met this girl after he landed. The only person to ever show him kindness, and she's brutally killed. And I'm like, wait, this is a romantic comedy? Like, this is depressing. So I'm like, wait, but you girls like this. So like, if you can do that, then I can do a romantic comedy and do a rug pull on people when dark stuff happens. I've had a secret, a small group of friends that were reading the book while I was working my manuscript. I'm like, okay, this is the first one I'm ever going to publish. I never done this before. And sure enough, around this part in the book, they kept messaging me. It's like, hey, I think you made a mistake in the book because it goes from this lightheartedness to this like nightmare. It's like, oh, that's on purpose. So that means it worked because that's how it happened in real life. Like, what?
Well, women like drama. Yeah, they like drama. So if you can get into drama and they like that like heartbreaking longing. So if you have a character that is longing for a love he can never have, like that's it. They'll eat that up.
Yeah, and
some guys will too, guys. I'm not trying to say guys don't like that, but not at the same.
We like it. We just wanted to be part of the hero's journey. It's not just romance, but hero's journey.
Yeah, hero's journey.
So,
that's good.
So that's what I was able to do. I have 3 entries into the novel series. It's like a planned 6 books, stuff. But so all this is telling a story. But I'm glad you're like the first one to notice the Batman stuff because and
that absolute Batman down there too. I see it.
Yes, Long Halloween. Yeah. So the absolute Long Halloween, and I sent pictures. Normally around like my anniversary, I like to post up pictures, and I had posted a picture. I was a soundtrack collector, so I didn't have the radio to turn to. I had to get these myself. So I took a picture of all the soundtracks I had, all the comic book selections I had, and I said, "This is what I sold to raise the money for the engagement ring." And like, you did what? It's like, yeah, and these are the limited edition Lego sets that I also sold.
Oh man! So you were a nerd, and you just became a geek because you had to sell it off to grow up. I get it.
Yeah,
the same thing here, man. I used to collect literally every Thursday. I'd go to the comic book store to pick up the new trades, and now it's like I may get a graphic novel once every couple years just to be like, let me see what this whole story is about. Like I don't keep into it weekly anymore as I used to, which kind of. But I have a son, so I feel like eventually I can get him to fall for that, and I'll ride with him if that becomes like his new one of his hobbies. So I'm excited for that.
My kids do too, and I'm surprised that. Well, is your son old enough to reach over and think that those comic books are coloring books yet?
No, not yet. Right now, he just touches. He's like,
Yeah.
He just wants to be like, wow, look at the colors. He's 11 months. He's going to be 12 or 1 year or 12 months. It's going to be 1 year next month.
Right
so
on.
we're really excited. So he's not there yet to completely destroy anything, but he tries. He tries.
Right on.
Boy,
So when I was selling off, because I had Absolute Watchmen and I had Absolute The Dark Knight Returns.
Yeah.
And I sold those. You have that?
Oh. Yeah, I have the big like book,
the large
of it.
print.
There's
Right?
a big coffee book of it. Yeah, it's a huge like hard cover book. Yeah, it's like that. Yeah, it's just like that, but it's the Dark Knight.
There we go.
It's just like that. It's in the sleeve and everything, but it's the Dark Knight.
I also had Hush, so Absolute Hush, and
which was crazy. Why did they make when they did the animated version? Why did they make it the Riddler? Like you had, I mean, we're going off into a whole bunch of different places, but that's the thing that gets me about what Hollywood has done to Marvel and DC. It's like we don't necessarily need a new idea about it. We just want to see what we grew up with live action. That's really all it is.
Yeah.
Like, if you want to be like, oh, and then the twist is not what you expect. I'm like, well, no, I expected to see a live action version of what I know.
Yeah.
Not you going, and then I did this, so it made it mine. Like, it's yours because they paid you to do the job. That's how it's yours. Like, I don't care about anyway, that's just me. And they try to change everything up to make it special. I'm like, no, you're ruining
That's why I
it.
skipped Hush.
Ruining
That's
it.
why I skipped the Long Halloween, especially Long Halloween. That's mine. That's like my Batman stories right there. Like, don't mess with it. But I ended up selling when I sold off those Absolute ones so I could raise money for the engagement ring. Everyone that was buying it from me on eBay asked me, "Hey, do you have the Absolute Long Halloweens?" Like, oh yeah, I do. Oh, you're gonna sell it? Heck no. No. So that's the
no. That's the one.
It stays, man. And when I heard that Christopher Nolan was using that as the kind of like the foundation for telling the Dark Knight with Heath Ledger, I'm like, dude, am I going to need tissues at this movie? Because I'm going to cry. I love this. I love where you're going with it. And
that's awesome.
I was a movie blogger for some time, from 2003 to 2009. I retired.
When they were still decent.
When they were still decent,
yeah.
So I ended up being part of the viral campaign at the time for The Dark Knight, and I think I have it here. Let's see.
Oh, that's awesome.
So as a reward, here it is. They gave me from the set the Gotham Times prop.
Oh, so wow.
They actually...
You got to put that in the frame, bro.
I brought it back from the garage because I got to put this away. And yeah, you're right. All my archives and my reviews are here. It was Universal and Paramount mostly, and to some extent Warner Brothers that would invite me to go see their movies. By the way, I had one of the first reviews, if not the first review in the world for The Dark Knight. After that, they enforced NDAs.
He's like, I can't do anything now.
It's like, okay. The last one they invited me to was the second Hobbit movie. I gave them the quote that they wanted. I told them it was better than the first. I mean, I hated both, but it was still true.
It was a little better than the first. Man, it just I don't know what's going on there.
If Guillermo del Toro had remained on it, it would have been a whole different thing for sure.
Yeah, it would have been very interesting to watch. The one thing I do like, the Hobbit movies, they do a good job because I watched the Hobbit movies and Lord of the Rings trilogy with my wife, and it was the first time she went through all of them. And I think it really, and we watched it from the Hobbit first, right? Because if you watch it from the Hobbit first and go all the way to Return of the King, you actually see and I like that this is what Peter Jackson did. The color tone gets grayer as you get towards the end of the full story, because as the way they did it, and I found out in an interview later after I did this is why he wanted to make it like that, because the dread was higher by the Return of the King. So my wife loved the color, and she even mentioned it when we were watching Two Towers. She's like, wow, it's so dark and gray compared to the Hobbit. I'm like, exactly. It's on purpose. So it changes your mood down into it. So, other than some, Legolas ice skating up rocks, it's I think that for the layman, for somebody who's coming in and just kind of watching it, it still gets people excited, which is a fun thing. But not going to see War of the Rohirrim. No, 'cause that's just like,
Yeah, I hear you there, but still, if that MGM thing had not been the main draw for why Guillermo del Toro had to basically burn all the bridges and go to New Zealand and try to develop this, and because it was stuck in limbo for so long, he wrote a
right.
book, I think, with Chuck Hogan. It was a vampire series called The Strain, and they ended up doing this trilogy, a really good trilogy, by the way. It makes the hair on the back of your neck stand up. I'm like, wow, this is
Yeah,
like.
yeah. Didn't they do a TV
They
series about
adapted
that?
it to a TV series. I think he was involved only for
Right,
the first season as a showrunner.
right.
The show does veer off in a different direction just because fans were a little split about the direction of the books, like describing the origin of vampirism. So in the third book, and there's a spoiler for everybody else, it's not in the show, so I'm not spoiling the show. Anybody's interested, pick up a book. So in the third book, it actually describes that it was. Yes, some connection to God and damning an angel, right? But the way it was
Yeah,
described is there were three angels that visited Abraham, and it's in the Bible that three individuals came,
right,
but they
right.
took that inspiration and said, and those three went to Sodom and Gomorrah. Two of them went to go do what God sent them to do. The third one, like what he
Right.
saw. So that's why the third one, that's basically the origin of vampirism in the story, and that's what kind of
In the
that's what
story,
kind of
yeah.
split the fandom. Like, oh, you went religious on this. Like, hey, it makes sense. And so,
Well, it's a little bit because the third was actually God himself. That was Jesus. Because Jesus
yes,
stayed
exactly.
and talked to Abraham, or that's it wouldn't be called Jesus then, just because he didn't have the name of Jesus as the born man. But the two angels went, and Abraham, people can go back, and this is sometimes with my Jewish friends. I'm like, look, why is he calling this angel Lord if it's not Lord with a capital L? But that's one of the times they call it what do they call it? Oh man, there's a framing for what they call when they have a basically Jesus makes his appearance, or the Son, if you will, the Word, if you want to call it, makes his appearance in the Old Testament. That's one of them. Just like in the line or in the
Fiery furnace,
fires
yes.
with
Son of
fiery furnace, where like the three of them, Meshach, Abednego, and
Ratchet.
Shadrach, I think
Yeah.
his name is, and it was like a fourth person in there
Yeah.
with him. That was God. So it's cool if you go in there, you can catch where Jesus is hidden within the Old Testament all over.
Yeah, and you know what's really, really trippy for anybody that wants to dive really deep into this? There's only one mention of a lineage called Melchizedek in the Old Testament,
Yes.
and
Yes.
Jesus is of that
Yep.
lineage. Who was that guy that arrived and interrupted Abraham from meeting with the king of Sodom? Because he just comes out of nowhere. Like he's like, hey,
Well,
let's meet first.
and Melchizedek means the Prince of Peace. So Melchizedek is saying that is God.
Yeah.
So Melchizedek is Prince of Peace. Yeah. You see, that's the first time we see 10% of a tithe go to anyone. He's also the high priest, and there's only one high priest,
Yeah.
right? And that is Jesus. So scholars speculate Melchizedek is that's another example of Christophany, I think is what it's
I
called.
think you might be
So
right.
that's another example of him in there showing himself in these moments. And then also Melchizedek just disappears. You're
Yeah.
like, what? But yeah, and Abraham was he revered him as the highest of high. And it's the only one that he gave, that he wanted to give, 10% of
Yeah.
everything to, and with no background story of why would this guy be here. So
Yeah.
it's Melchizedek. You got, the angel of the Lord, multiple places, and right there with Abraham as the other two went down to Sodom and Gomorrah in the furnace. There's so many different times. It's really fascinating. It's like as I'm learning, going further and further, it really blows my mind, like how it's the Old New Testament it is one. It is just super connected.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's a beautiful thing. And I'm glad that we kind of veered off in getting into this because the show on the History Channel, the Bible, that's where basically it stems from, and they try to squeeze in as much as the Bible as possible.
Right.
Really, the New Testament, but they put it into 10 episodes. They devoted 4 of those episodes to the story of Jesus, which is the most important part of it all. And that's the whole point of it. That's what it leads up to. So I thought it was well done for what it was. But Bible movies of that caliber, that's like we could go all the way back to the Charlton Heston era to think about like the Moses movie, the Ten Commandments. But even in the 1990s, TNT had a series called the Bible Collection. So the Bible series, there were 6 films. The first one was Abraham, starring Richard Harris as Abraham and Barbara Hershey as Sarah. I don't know if you're familiar with these.
No.
Go back, see it. You'll probably never see Abraham as anybody else than Richard Harris. But the reverence that he has in that meeting when the angels and God shows up to meet with Abraham is among the most powerful reflections. Like, this is how it's done. He knew exactly who was there. And I love the way they portrayed. So there's 6 official movies in the canon with TNT. So there was a Turner Pictures, I believe. No.
Wow.
So it was Abraham, Jacob, Joseph, Moses, Samson and Delilah, and David. So those were the official 6. There were 6 more done by the same production team, but not under that. And you can actually get the whole 12-part collection on Google. Like if you go Google, let me see, dude, I'm gonna send you the link right now.
Yeah, I got a link for you. I'm sending you as well.
Yeah. My father used to buy these things, and I see the posters from TNT, and I'm like, oh, I got to check this out.
Well, so Angel Studio has been doing a great job in presenting, the faith in such a interesting way. You know, of course, we know The Chosen, and The Chosen is just it just can draw you in. They actually did another movie called His Only Son, and it's a story of it's a story of when God asked Abraham to take his son Isaac to go sacrifice him, and in this story, they do a great job of bringing in like what the issue with what happened with Ishmael, and it really did a really, really good job of telling this story and keeping the drama in there, because he's traveling from his home all the way to, where I forget the mountain, but the same mountain that Jesus ends up getting crucified on, I think it is. So it shows. It's just really done. It's done really well, man. Like, I think it definitely you will really enjoy that movie.
And that's just it. That why I brought all that up is because we are seeing a bit of a resurgence in the independent sector to rise up. I always highlight Angel Studios coming about. I mean, this is basically the Mormon Church. They started out with Studio C, kind of being like a more clean, family-friendly version of SNL. A lot of skits, same cast of characters and all that, and it was good for what it was. And then a couple of them, and Matt Macy, I think his name is, ended up becoming the face of VidAngel, before Angel Studios came about, and how Hollywood wanted to take them down. Like, we're not trying to edit anything of the original product, and we're not even charging for the service. We're just trying to make it a way for people to be entertained with these same things, right? And now look where it is. Now they're official. It's like Netflix, and
they actually. They just expanded out to Europe,
and that's awesome.
They just expanded out there,
and we as a Christian community could not be more divided. We cannot come together to support something because, like, it's Mormon. Yes, I too had some concerns about how much of an influence the Mormon or the Latter-day Saints might have on Dallas Jenkins' vision of The Chosen. But my issues with Dallas Jenkins go all the way back to before he started the project, because of some stuff that he said. And I've addressed it before, and I love what he's done with the show
Chosen.
What I haven't liked has been some people turning to that as gospel, and of course there's always that risk of you're putting more words in Jesus Christ, and there's a big no when it comes to
adding to
the theology and all that, and I'll let other people have that argument, but my thing was that there was a show, the same production team that did the Bible series did AD on NBC. Are you familiar with this? They even changed the name so many times.
I think so. I mean, I was really secular for a long time. So I just became a Christian about 3.5 years ago. So it's like, man, I was going hard in the paint the other way.
Well, so look, it's not pulling up the links for me. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to send it to you after we're wrapped.
Yeah, send it on.
So
next.
So the show is called AD The Bible Continues. It was trying to NBC poured $100 million into this project, a Christian project on a secular network. That's impossible. NBC, they take a shot at Christianity every chance they get, but here they spend $100 million, and the set designs are amazing. So AD, the reason the marketing was a little off because they wanted to capitalize on the Bible series for the History Channel because it was the biggest of its kind, and I think was one of the most massive sales in Blu-ray and DVD at the time too. So NBC was like, "Wait, there's an audience for this, yes," but they put it AD the Bible continues. But how could it continue though if they told the whole story in the Bible? Well, AD is technically the book of Acts. So it starts off with Jesus already having been arrested. We're looking at it through a perspective of the disciples. And it's only about it's the end of the Gospels and about chapter 9 of Acts. That's what they cover in 12 episodes.
Okay.
So they meant it to be a mini series with an option to pick up, and it wasn't. But it's I gotta tell you, it's spirit filled, man. That show,
Really?
and it puts you. We see what's happening in the time of Christ from three perspectives. We see it from the disciples, mostly Peter. We see it from the perspective of Caiaphas, and you start getting into his head, like, dude, you were trying to navigate a powder keg here. And Pontius Pilate, played by Vincent Reagan, and one of the scariest Pontius Pilates I've ever seen. And it's a gorgeously made show. To me, it was spirit filled. It'll draw you to tears in some moments. It's just so powerful. But what I enjoyed the most was them not watering down the violence and the fear that these disciples live with. Bill O'Reilly, someone I don't really like, but he had this series of books of novels called Killing, like a political
killing Jesus, killing Kennedy.
Lincoln,
I remember those.
So I did pick up the one about killing Jesus, which is very interesting because, like, well, you guys are supposed to be drawing from historical sources. How are you gonna explain that you have to derive this from the Gospels and historian Josephus? And they do an entire introduction, and they tell the story. Almost feels like AD the series, but at the conclusion of the book, Bill O'Reilly puts in a personal note because his co-author is Jewish, and I'm assuming Orthodox probably doesn't believe, but at least he contributed to the story. So at the conclusion of it, it's the epilogue. Bill O'Reilly talks about, look, these guys that said, oh, like Peter, like, Jesus, I'll die for you, I'll die with you, or whatever. But they all ran away at the very end, except John. He was there all the way through. They all ran away. Cowards, so to speak. But then he's like, this is how they died. And then he goes to the entire list of how disciples were martyred, except John. Yeah. And it's so horrific. And it paints a picture. So then he asked the question, what happened in those 3 days that these cowards became so brave that they were willing to die in this way for what they saw?
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. When I was explaining Paul to a friend of mine, I was telling him, I go, we're both in Hollywood, and I go, you've seen what we've gone through by being open about our support of Trump and, being conservative and talking about God and how people in Hollywood have turned their backs and, agents dropping me and all that stuff. And I go, so imagine someone being like a big time producer in Hollywood who has produced like Ryan Murphy, who produced, everything from Glee to all the American Horror Stories. Then one day turning around and you're doing nothing but spreading the gospels honestly. And he said in between that, and I'm like, in between that, he said he had an experience with Christ. So he took away and gave up, like Paul gave up everything, or Saul at the time, gave up everything that was to be a Sadducee and is to be at the top of the game, and everyone's revering him and for his knowledge, and basically growing up as like being prepared to be the next best, Jewish leader for that time, and killing it, in a sense, like leading Christians to be killed because of their belief. To then all of a sudden he's spreading it around the Mediterranean. And he said he had a meeting with Christ on the road to Damascus. So it tells me he truthfully went and did this thing over here. He truthfully started this place over here. That is more true in that middle here for him to change completely over here. And then he was brutally killed as well. So you start to see, like, even James, Jesus' brother, was like, nah, he's all good. And then later on, he becomes one of his biggest, evangelists. So it just tells people don't die for a falsehood like that. And they don't allow themselves to be tortured and killed for falsehoods, And this guy to come and God to do what he did, and to, like you said, for Peter to be like, I got your back, and then it happens, he's like, no, I don't know that guy. Who you talking about 3 times, and then he's like, "Oh wow," and just how heavy his heart is. It. By the way, AD, the Bible Continues. I just looked it up. It is free on YouTube for anybody
Oh,
who
that's
wants to go watch
good.
it.
They're doing it
Yeah, I'm gonna
again.
watch that.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Because
yeah, it's free on
that
YouTube.
means they're doing it again for Passover, because they did that, I think, a year or two ago. So yeah,
Really?
so the show's been called several things. It's been called AD The Bible Continues. That was the original title, and because the marketing
Right.
for that kind of fell flat, they relabeled it and they relaunched it on Netflix. It was called AD Kingdoms and Empires. And then they just
Mm,
stuck with AD the series. So it can be
right.
found in any of these titles. And I always tell people, check this out. I was actually they did a talk show based on this. So like kind of like Walking Dead
Oh,
had the Talking Dead.
Walking
This one
Dead.
had
Yeah, yeah,
Beyond
yeah.
AD. It was filmed at a church near Six Flags Magic Mountain in Valencia.
Okay. Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah, yeah. I used to live
I
right over
did
there.
I did go to that taping. They said previews. Sometimes it's usually evangelical leaders in the space, or those that were
Right.
advisors, or some of the actors would show up and just talk about the experience and all that. I thought it was awesome. Like NBC, to their credit, they poured so much money into this thing, and it shows
Yeah.
when you see it. It looks like you're watching the Passion of the Christ miniseries. It looks
Wow.
that expensive. The costumes are amazing. The
Okay.
actors are they brought their A game, man. Adam, what's his name? He's the one who plays Peter. He comes down The Witcher. And then there's Vincent Reagan as Pontius Pilate.
Mm.
Robert, what's your name, as Caiaphas? He played a very convincing Caiaphas. I'm like, okay, I get where you're coming from here. So I do recommend people to go see it. It really tells you the social geopolitical and just tense climate in Judea at the time.
Nature of that time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
And it. Oh,
no,
sorry. Go
you
ahead.
you
I was gonna say to your point about we were watching The Chosen 2 nights ago, I believe. And as I'm sitting there watching it, and I was thinking about the whole point about the Mormons, and I was thinking about, they had that controversy where they saw that pride flag at the, it was behind the scenes photo in Dallas, and what he said and how he's done things. And it hit me. It just came to me, 1 Corinthians 22, where it's like, to the weak I became as weak, that I might win the weak. I have become all things to all men, that I might by all means save some, not all, right? And I thought to myself, and my wife and I, Charlotte, we were talking about how many people have come to Christ from that show. And at the very least, because I know one of the things when I talk to some of my Jewish friends, or what I understood about Jesus before I became Christian, and what some people, even some Catholics that I would talk to that understand about Jesus, it's really just a commercial understanding of Jesus. And what this show does that I found really fascinating, it draws you in so much that if you wanted to go deeper, you have to go to the Bible. Like you can't just stay in the show and go, okay, I know Jesus, that's what it is. Now, if you want to stay at a surface level, from what I've seen, I'm like, look, okay, you get a nice feeling inside. I get it. And a lot of the message is there. But if you want to go deeper and go like what they've been through and what they're talking about, it's like there's only one other place to go. And I don't know, and I haven't seen in my lifetime a show that that question that can gnaw at you in your mind, that would pull you straight to the Gospels. And that, to me, that verse just kind of came to me. I think it's the Holy Spirit putting it on me. But that verse came to me about, Jesus talks about, like, yeah, not everyone's going to get in, but he's not even talking about be everything to everyone so everyone can be saved. He's being everything to everyone so some.
Yeah.
Because only a few are going to go, let me go see what this is really about. And hey, at least you're getting it out there to the masses. We're speaking of Jesus in a way now that, even 4, 5, 6 years ago, it wasn't in the social zeitgeist in the same way. People have to be, especially in Hollywood, like, yes, I'm a believer, but I keep it quiet. Now it's you're wearing your cross on your chest again. You're like, yeah, I love God. So it to me, there is a big shift going on. I just did Tim Pool the other day, and Tim, while he's not a Christian per se, he leans and appreciate Christian values and sees the benefit. That's so much further than like where he was at Occupy Wall Street back in the early 2000s. And you're like, man, it took about 24 years, but you see where this man has come, and it takes what it takes. And it says in the Bible all the time, endure till the end. So I never know. I'm starting to learn you never know what can actually really happen, the work Christ can do in anyone, even if they get just a taste from a TV show that is produced by Mormons about Christ that can actually plant the seed, right? Because God talks about planting the seed in different pastures, but it's not your responsibility to make sure it grows unless it's a disciple, but it's your responsibility to just plant it. And to Dallas's credit, he's planting the seeds all over the world. And I go, okay. I go, all right, at the very least, they get him back to wanting to be curious about Christ. And that is a great thing from where we were.
How many people ended up picking up the Lord of the Rings books because they saw Lord of the Rings? They wanted more of it. Right?
I did. I remember the first one. I read the other two before the other two even came out because I was like, I gotta
know, right? And that's what I feel about the Chosen. In of it itself, the first 3 seasons are an incredible success story, a crowdsourced show. It's when the studios got involved in a lot of legal stuff ended up happening, and therein comes the problems, right? But that's I think of all controversies, that might have actually been the biggest ones. How could you partner with Lionsgate? But I also understood that he wants to, at least have that power to throw it elsewhere, because how else can you distribute? When people are quick to forget 21 years ago when Mel Gibson was going to release The Passion of the Christ, how no theater wanted it, or no distributor wanted to distribute the film. So he had to open his own distributor with his own finances to distribute the film. And it's like, it's not just make a movie. Okay, what do I do with it now? That's why you
got to get it out there.
You got to get it out there. And that's what some people miss about this whole thing. I think what I don't like is that there'll always be those Christians that are just looking for a reason not to want something to succeed. It's like, okay, see, that's why. And bring it down.
Yeah.
Controversies aside, I'm like, I never tell people don't watch The Chosen. It's like, I point out some stuff. They're like, hey, but for those that should know better, it's like, look, you can cross-check it if you're a Christian and all that, but to the newcomers, it's like, use that as a tool to bridge. And let's turn to the Gospels and let's really dive deep into what this is.
Yeah, it's good that you say that, because what I've started to notice too is that I have seen that where it's like, some Christians would be like, oh, and just want to point out why it's not. I now see it as an opportunity. Right. How many chances do you get to have Christ-filled correction if someone's like, oh, I said The Chosen and this is what Jesus is? Well, now you have a chance to actually share the full gospel with someone. Whereas how many times do people get an opportunity just to bring up Jesus to people? Yeah. Not really many. So if they are misguided on it based off this show, but it's a show that now it's like a warm intro in business, right? If your friend knows the guy the job you're going for, for a job you're going for, it's easier for you to get the job because the boss knows your friend. Yeah. So it's kind of like that, where it's like, well, they have a warm understanding about Christ. So if they bring it up from the show, now you get to, help to, if they're off, help to correct them to, towards the Bible, towards the gospel, then that you wouldn't probably never even talk about, because most people are still afraid to talk about Jesus openly. Yeah. Right. So I actually just say, look at this opportunity to then bring in the gospel and bring in the true word of God to people. And I don't know what else has done that recently. And I actually see it as a net benefit than a net negative.
Absolutely. I think it's over 10 years ago now that the series came out. And Christians were looking just take that down. You know what the biggest criticism towards that show was? Why is it a multicultural cast? I'm sorry, what? It's like, why did they make John black?
Well, because NBC, they were getting started. They were doing that stuff early.
Did you guys even see the show? So that's where it really upset me. Some people were trying to say it was going woke. I'm like, what's woke about the word? Because they literally try to stick to the scriptures for the disciples, and fill in the blanks for Pontius Pilate and Caiaphas. But see, that's what I mean. That there's always attempts to bring something down, always bring down a project. That's why we can't have something good within ourselves, because we're so divided. That even goes for the conservative space and all that. But
see, that's why I think go to correct, not to destroy. Because if you go to correct the person, because like this is what I notice in the arts, right, or anything that people love, but even in politics, people have like a heartfelt, and I've seen this for like, I talk to my family or anybody on the left about where they sit. I would approach and be like, that's crazy, you're crazy. And now they're defending something they care about, which they're going to defend more than they're going to listen to truth. That just the way people work. So if you have an opportunity, you ask them questions based on it, and within there, you bring in the truth of what it is. So if they're like, oh, I love AD and and this and that, and it was cool because I didn't know John was black. Well, he wasn't black. I know they did that for entertainment standpoint, but they were all Jews. Oh, yeah, no, there are Jesus's disciples were all Jews. Oh, I'll tell you this right now. I know a lot of people who outside the faith, when you tell them that all his disciples were Jews, they're like, oh, wait, what? I didn't know. You'd be like, yeah, everything in the Bible is written by Jewish people. Oh, I thought that they were Christians. No, they were
the first Christians.
Like, exactly. Yeah. Then, they called it the way. Yeah. And so I think that when you're able to kind of correction, but within where, again, all things to all people. So you find, he goes, when they were weak, I was weak, meaning I kind of leaned closer to where they were. I wasn't giving them the, grad school example of what Christianity is, because they're only sitting there in elementary school when it comes down to the understanding of Christianity. So why would I teach them from this place right away? That's just going to turn them off. So I think we got to find ways to look at it as opportunities. My old pastor, Pastor Rob McCoy over at Thousand Oaks Godspeak Church, would say people are the opportunity, not the enemy. And so we get a chance to then let them go down the rabbit hole of truth as we guide them, and I'm still working on this, but as gently as possible, so that you just get them to the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit, God works through people. So it's like, hey, why don't you go check out? I always like to go check out John first. To me, John is like the blockbuster movie, right? Like that's like you come in and it's pop, pop, pop. And I was like, then you work around and you go to Mark. Mark's like your, weekly TV series. Matthew is like your History Channel version, and like Luke it would be like your FX, TV series, which is going to be a little more gritty, a little longer, a little more depth, but not as deep as like Matthew. So it's like you see that each of the books kind of fit for a certain type of audience, and if you can just get people involved, I think you trust the Spirit will take them from there.
Yeah, well, and that's why Paul says that when I was a child, I spoke like a child, I ate like a child, but when I became a man, he got steak. You don't give a baby steak, especially if he doesn't have the teeth.
I tried. You don't do it. Don't do it, guys. I learned the hard way. You
gotta eat this steak, and you're like,
you gotta eat the steak, but this is gonna get you strong, man. I need you to be that running back. Right? Come on, no,
it's like
we got a game on Saturday. No, it's
step at a time.
Right?
Yeah, and that's just it. That I do wish we could prop ourselves up some more. It was the first podcast. It was a small creator that asked me, hey, would you be on my podcast? He was on my podcast first. We talked about big tech and censorship and all that. And immediately afterwards, we were going to do his show. So I'm like, okay, I thought it was going to be the same subject. But instead, it was a good ambush. He ambushed me with the topics of philosophy, atheism, and how like Christians can maybe work together to combat CRT and all that. And I'm like, well, that's not what I thought we were going to talk about, but hey, I'm game. And it was a very productive conversation. He just identified himself as a third wave atheist.
Wow.
Okay. And he's come a long way to find Christ. So that's actually a really good thing.
Wow.
So he was coming
amazing.
from a place where he wanted to understand. But when he asked me, it's like, hey, do you think like the Christians and the Catholics can set aside the differences, come together to combat CRT? I'm like, no. It's like why? Because some of the churches are at the forefront of pushing CRT. They are part of the problem. So it's sad that we see that in this fear and all. But
well, I do have to say there was. Do you remember in when the Dodgers did the
pride thing?
Oh. Yeah, it was the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence something or whatever
like
it was.
Yeah, the drag nuns.
Yeah, the drags nuns. There were majority of them were Catholics, but there was a good amount of Protestants there as well. And I think that within these last couple of years, I believe, and I'm starting to see that people are starting to remove and not fully remove, but the idea of the authority of each denomination away from kind of if an individual has Christ in their heart. Because while I believe that, there's parts of Mormonism, a lot of part of Mormonism that is completely wrong, I think the thirst for loving Jesus is there. Now you just have to help correct. So they're on the right path in a certain, or they're going down the right direction. They're just misaligned for fully of what he brings and what he offers, because they're also following another book. But, if we can get to a place where our starting point is Christ, or if our starting point is Christ, we have a chance right there to work together when we see things moving away from Christ. It's almost like when we watch the Jews, Christians, and Muslims come together to fight off against the woke stuff about the sexual stuff in school. It's like, yeah, we're not, I say Jews and Christians are, but Islam is not the same religion, even though they claim, but they have a religious base where they believe it's one God like we do. Mm-hmm. And so then people come together because we go, no, there's a standard that we live by. So as Christians, if we go, the standard is Christ, we can worry about how we work in that, and how we, move around in that. But the standard is Christ. Maybe there's a chance that we can use that to move, his kingdom forward. So I do think it's getting better than when I was growing up, and even the 4 or 5 years ago. But we'll keep seeing what happens.
I happen to agree with you, because I think people are just tired of the division. Do you like to see it in politics? Mm-hmm. It's the same thing. And however people might consider it, right now the Republican Party is kind of become like the big tent of everyone going over there. So, take that as you may. I just hope that the leadership remembers, to stick by the conservative principles and not.
Well, here's because I ran for office. I was vice chair of LA County GOP, and as a Christian conservative Republican, and talking to a lot of Christian conservative Republicans. I think, just like I was mentioning earlier about correction, I think a lot of disdain for the movement and the direction that the Republican Party was going. It just got into an angry place about it, as opposed to going, okay, it told me something. We got to organize better if we're going to really play in that game, because other groups are coming in organized, because they're also coming away from something else organized. The left has been great about organizing their different coalitions. So if that different coalition is moving, they're like, we're coming in here because they threw us away, but they're still organized. Yes. And so as Christians, especially conservatives, it's like you have to organize. Then you have to establish yourself that these individuals who are going for the position need to come to you for the okay. Right now, they don't really need to come to conservatives for the okay, right? Because they know, hey, we're going to get that vote no matter what. So if they come to you, or you start to cultivate your own candidates. So a lot of times I've noticed that in politics, we've started to, and just like in faith, we started to become spectators or Monday morning quarterbacks, where it's like, we'll sit back, wait till somebody shows up and be like, oh, he's not Christian enough. I'm like, well, why didn't you run for office? Or why didn't you and the neighborhood of business owners that you guys know come together and you be your own chamber of commerce, so that if people know you have, 150, 200 families in a neighborhood that are Christian conservative and they want things this way, and it's like called the must come and see us first group, like these politicians want to win. They want to get the job. So they're going to come. And that's what they used to do back in the day, is they have to go to the churches. These politicians had to go to the churches and speak to the pastors and speak to the congregation to get a validation and validity behind it. So why do we all of a sudden sit back? And I saw it in Hollywood. I've seen it in politics. I've seen it in schools. Like, to me, I believe Christians have set back so much and then criticize, as opposed to organizing and making where they have to pass through you in order to continue to get their check marks or whatever. At this point, they didn't have to. Trump is showing that he wanted to go, hey, I got your back. And that's him wanting to. But stop waiting for the perfect person to show up and be that, and gather the masses together. That's what Jesus did. He didn't wait for people to just come to him. He didn't sit back and go, yeah, I'm the Son of God. They need to know. They should know. They should just show up. Like, no, he went out and found the people and was like, hey, this is the info. Come follow me. So that's something I do. And it's changing. It's not the same as it was 5 years ago. Trust me, it's changing. But if we can get together and we can organize more consistently, start small, start local, start with your neighborhood, then branch out to your town. And when these elected officials come up, you have power now. You have the ability to say yes or no, and they see that, and they're going to have to consider that when they're working with you. But if you don't have that weight and you're just expecting them to just do the right thing, they're out there to win races. Yeah. I've watched it. They're going to do what it is to go, well, I gotta make sure we remove just men and women because, for marriage, because we have the gay population. I got to make sure we do this because we have this group, we have that group. And it's like, okay, those groups also have power. Mm-hmm. Those groups also have a coalition that can sit there and somebody makes a statement and it goes to everybody in their group of 12,000 or whatever it is, right? Do the Christians have that level of power? And if you don't, please stop screaming at, it's like pissing in the wind. Stop screaming to the sky just to hope it changes. You go organize this stuff. get your churches together, have meetings, have weekly town halls, or however monthly, or however you want to do it. But I think it's taking action to build the coalition that you want to see have power, instead of hoping that they should just do the right thing, because that's not going to be, at least in my experience, I haven't seen that move the needle in the way a lot of people want it to move.
Yeah. And I'm glad you brought that up, because it finally clicked on me when you said it on Tim Pool. You were at a baseball game with, I think it was Ventura County District, with Cole Brocado.
Oh, yeah.
And
a softball
yeah,
game.
and you guys won, I think.
Yeah. Yes, we did. And not only did we win, brother, but your boy hit the game-winning shot to blow it all. Like, literally, it was the last pitch of the game. Pop, I cracked it deep and then did an inside the park home run. Like, it was a whole thing. You couldn't script it any better. It was beautiful. Cole and I actually both moved to Tennessee, so he lives like 10 minutes away from, or no, like 15 minutes away from me. So
right on.
Yeah, I love that guy. Yeah. We try to make it fun. That's the other thing. I wanted to do things running for office that was going to be fun. Like, we did the softball game. We did just like a little, something in the park where we invited churches to come and be seen, so people can go, oh, where are you at? Oh, I'm around the corner. And then you have the neighborhood get to learn about their church community. We did stand-up comedy shows for fundraisers, instead of just your sit-down suit and tie dinner, because we wanted people to have fun. I'm like, why are we doing these things kind of cookie cutter when we're trying to get everyone involved? Let's start to go out there and show that we are fun, that faith, family, and freedom is a fun thing to be a part of, not just, we're trying to take away rights, because no, it's like we're trying to give you and show you something that actually can point you into a more full life than this search for who's the next person you're going to sleep with, or when's the next drink you're going to get, or how much money can I get the next big check just to get another big check. No, faith, family, and freedom is, like, to me, the way, and let's start to show it. And something that's great, we've been talking about stories, and from comics to Christ. From comics to Christ. Patent pending. No, we've been talking about that, and something that I always tried to say, and why I push, whether it's a Daily Wire, Turning Point, or Babylon B, and Babylon B, I think, doing a great job they're all doing a great job, but especially Babylon B, is like, we as conservatives and as Christians need to tell more of our stories. Because if we look into the Bible, the greatest storyteller ever was Jesus Christ. So why would we not use that skill set that he presented himself, that is in all of us, in order to capture the hearts and minds of our communities? Why it's not just 1 + 1 = 2. Like, not just where does anyone say, you can't find anywhere in the Bible where Jesus says, I'm God, follow me or you're going to hell. He tells them stories about how painful there's going to be hard for the rich man, because he can't ultimately let go of worldly possessions to get into the kingdom of heaven. So why not tell stories? Like, we need to be on top of telling stories. And I think that's why the podcast space has been working so well, but it's still, it stays still in the more of the analytical space, and not the create, doesn't move as much in the creative space as it can. And so now let's continue this journey and start to bring in our stories. And we see Angel Studios expanding out the way it has. And we see, I know some other companies that are moving away and want to tell more faith-led stories. And I would say, you don't have to make a Christian movie, but being a Christian making a movie, that's the difference. When you have godless making a movie, like, I'll bring up again Ryan Murphy, and I was on the show, I worked on his show Ratchet, that's on Netflix, and you've seen his stuff with American Horror Story, and it's like just a lot of demonic stuff. And even in that first episode I did, that first episode, he kills off a bunch of priests, like, brutally, and you're like, there he goes again. That's what he's pointing towards God. But it's like, that's his storytelling for the other side, right? So we're like, our storytelling now, to me, for the other side is something like The Chosen, which is like, it's directly Jesus Christ. But then let's look at just so many shows like God's Not Dead on Angel. If you've seen Nefarious by it was done by The Blaze as well, and Steve Dace, he did that. And Nefarious, if anyone wants to go and watch Nefarious, it's a movie done by Christians. It's a suspense thriller done by Christians, and you're just as scared as you've done any secular movie, but yet without knowing it, you're getting faith poured all over you, but in such a unique and beautiful way of storytelling that I go, I know Christians did this project. So we can do that. We don't have to be secular. You don't have to. The Bible is rated everything, because if you see there's a lot of killing and murder. So if you want to do violent do violent action, bloody movies, okay, it's in there. Just go and check out what David was doing,
Exactly.
or everywhere in the Bible. So I think it's all in there to tell the stories, and we shouldn't be afraid of telling raw stories, because that's what God showed us in His work in the Bible.
Yeah, and I think that's how it makes it more human, especially when
Right.
people are like, well, that's what happened 2,000 years ago. What about now? Well, we are that now. We are the proof that
Right.
God's still working in us. Jehovah's Witnesses say that the time of miracles is over. It's like, really? That's weird, because I see miracles every day. So I reject that conclusion. Last I checked, the Great Commission was go to preach to everyone in all corners of the earth. It doesn't say except these people.
Right. Exactly. And then you think we talk about the miracles over. It's funny. I had Jehovah's Witnesses come to my door, and I had invited them back, and they came for about a month before they stopped, and I would debate them. And it's like, when you say that miracles are over, like, what miracles? Because I know I was done. When I was at the darkest place, where I was drinking so much that I at one point was like, man, I can't kill myself, but maybe I can go do death by suicide by cop, by holding the knife up at my local liquor store, just to end this thing. So the fact that now I have a son, we're in a house, we're in a beautiful place in Tennessee, to me, that's a miracle from where I was. So it just baffles me that, it's not always going to look like the parting of the Red Sea, but does not mean the miracles still don't exist, because we also live, in a sense, culturally, it's the same issues we deal with, but culturally we're like, no one has ever been able to do what we're doing right now throughout the history of the world, right? No one's ever been able to just watch a show, multiple things on your phone, where it's always coming at you, where you can pop on headphones and block out the world like that. We haven't been that. So be also different miracles in that. And so that you can still push through the noise of the world, and Jesus opened, or you can open yourself up to Jesus and be saved. Like, that is a miracle to me, bigger than just separating the sea, because it's of what the individuals have been going through. I mean, I was a wretch. I was fornicating like crazy. I was drinking like crazy. I was, again, thought I was like, well, let me go find a way to die. And God saved my life, where now I can have a son and a family that I've always wanted since I was 10 years old, that I thought was never going to happen again. So to me, it's a miracle. Like, that is a miracle, man. Like, how can you say it doesn't exist anymore? That's baffling to me. Right. That's so baffling.
Yeah, and I'm glad that that you heard God calling you out of that darkness. That's I talked about the book series earlier. It's easier to tell a story through a third party character, to be able to tell my experiences and stuff. And I open up about suicide in there, the attempts and all that. I shouldn't be here. 5 times, here I am. And the last time, it was with full authority. I was in the kitchen of my parents' house. Oh, I was a teenager, so that's where it was. And my intent was, I want to off myself, not leave a note, because I want everybody to wonder why this happened. I never asked to be alive. No one asked me for permission. And so, like, okay, so now I have a life, but I'm being told I got to live it in some way. And then if I don't, I'm going to be punished for it. It's like, dude, first off, everything's rigged against me. I didn't ask to be here. And now I can't do anything with this life supposedly of mine. So that's why I'm like, I'm not leaving a note. You figure it out. That's where I was. And this is someone that was born and raised in the church, and nothing bad was ever done to me. It's just, I just never cared. So it was at night, in that darkness in the kitchen, I made sure the lights were off, because even I didn't want to see what I was going to do with the knife. But there was an authoritative voice in the darkness that said, drop the knife. And I immediately dropped the knife. And I could hear the voice coming from the force coming from a direction, but I couldn't see anybody. And the voice continued and said, if I didn't have a purpose for you, I would have left you in that pool. And that was a reference to 5 years prior, where I open up about where I talk about this. I was pulled out of a pool by an individual I call an angel, because nobody else witnessed this individual pulling me out of a pool. And it was a very busy pool. And how could no one have seen this individual in the bright sunlight? And he was kind of shiny too. So it's like, I always attribute that an angel pulled me out of a pool, and no one's been able to tell me otherwise. It was at a Motel 6, St. George, Utah. I was 12 years old, and I was drowning in that pool. Nobody came to my rescue, but just for a fleeting moment, I saw someone reaching out their hand to me. So I kept trying to jump up from the bottom of the pool because I wasn't as tall as I am today. And when it looked like I almost grabbed the hand, I was now throwing up the water at the edge of the pool. And some people try to explain it in ways like, "Oh, you're looking at the light inside the pool." It's like, I'm looking up, man. And it was afternoon, and I kept asking, "Was there a helicopter?" Whatever. I was yelling at my friends and adults like, "How come no one came to my rescue?" So we thought you were faking. So it bothered me for several months, and several months later, my father was an evangelist. Asked me if I wanted to accept Christ as my personal savior. So that was an angel, wasn't it? So that's when I accepted. I became baptized at the age of 16. That's when I could Elisha praying to have the eyes open so you could see the demons and stuff. Like that's the spiritual, pretty much. I saw the demons and stuff, and that's when my walk got even more difficult. So after being baptized to confront suicide because they just didn't want it anymore, then with authority said, "No, I have a purpose for you. Otherwise, I would have left you in that pool." I'm like, I knew for a fact he was talking. Never again did I try. Yeah, ideations for sure. But once I got from depression and all that, and Christ delivered me from all that, I just never looked back. But I still tell that story because it's like, hey, it was a part of my upbringing, who I am, and God got me out of that. And he can do the same for others too. So,
wow.
Yeah.
I love those stories, man. Anyway, yeah, that's boy. He's just great, man. He's just great, and we just got to remember to keep leaning on him in those weak times.
Yeah,
that's why we all need a savior, because we're fallen.
Yeah,
like you said when you mentioned the disciples, like Peter walked with him. Peter was granted the title of the Rock, and he still ran.
Yeah.
So if you think you're weak and you're not deserving of it, I think that's how I gather part of that story of Peter. It's like he was even weak and he knew God. He knew God like the person that was here in the flesh. So if you run from him at this point, no, you're not weak. You're just a human being.
Yeah.
That's the more example of your fallen nature, because this dude was right there and still he ran, and then he came back and God still forgave him for that. And still it was like, yo, you got a mission. Like you said, I put you out of the pool for a reason. Yeah. And that's what he did. He said to Peter. So it's just like he always, throughout the Bible, he always like, yes, there can be judgment and punishment for your behavior, but he's asking you just to, a lot of times, to acknowledge your behavior and repent and turn to him for saving and grace on that. So it's amazing. It's amazing. From comic books to Christ. That's what you should label this episode.
You know what? I just might. And I want to make sure I squeeze this in because I know we're running up on time here. Because you had to deal with your own dark time because, as I understand it, you were part of the attempt to violently overthrow our government here.
Yeah, that's what they called it. I just didn't know I was a part of it until later, until months later.
Or how Nick seriously said, it's like, yeah, these violent overthrowers didn't bring their guns, they didn't bring their weapons or anything.
No, I didn't bring my gun or nothing. No. I didn't bring anything, man. I brought some gloves, a hat because it was cold outside. But yeah, I am a J6er, and I am fortunate enough because my trial date was January 21st. All my charges got dropped. So I didn't have to go through the court process. I mean, I was going through, or I didn't have to go through them labeling me in court records as a certain thing, right? Whereas I know a lot of people who got sentenced or got found guilty, they have labels on them that people can go back through and read on and however they wanted to present that. But I was fortunate enough, like I said, God's been hitting buzzer beaters in my life left and right. And we were supposed to go to court literally the day after inauguration. And that morning at 9 a.m., my lawyer is like, nope, case dismissed. See you later. I'm like,
that's awesome, man.
I'm like, that's cool.
Yeah, because I remember following. I think I started following you on social media around that time because you were at the premiere of Lady Ballers, I believe, right? It was Lady Ballers.
Yes.
Was it there in Nashville?
Yes, it was right there. It was right here in Nashville. And that was actually 2.5 years after my house was raided. So my house was raided in June of 2021, June 10th. It came with 15 agents, guns drawn, and everything. And this was just as they said, "Oh, this is just a search warrant." And I'm just like, wow. So I didn't get arrested or charged at that time. Within a few weeks, I found a lawyer, Larry Klayman, and we actually ended up suing the government for doing that, which I think helped keep them off my back from arresting me later or as quickly. But I was on the Quiet Skies list where the Tulsi Gabbard talked about that, where they had to check my identity with the Secretary of State's office in DC at the front desk of every time I flew. I had to go through extra security screening at the TSA checkpoint. And then every time I got to the gate, there were 7 to 8 agents sitting right there waiting for me to do the same thing they just did at the gate before. One time, actually, I was running, time was running late and they were low on people. They were low on people because the people had left to go wait for me at the other gate. So they couldn't start on my thing because they were so low on people because people were on there waiting for me to come. I'm like, this is insane. Wow. Yeah, so that was going on for years. And then they ended up, with the story Lady Ballers. I'm flying back from Nashville with my wife. She's 7 months pregnant at the time. And as we're getting off the airplane, as soon as my foot hit the tarmac at Burbank Airport, boom, you had agents. Female agent came in front of me, was like, "Mr. Massaquoi, please come with us." 2 guys jumped on either side of me. They took me over to the side. I didn't get to say anything to her. And they're like, "Yeah, you're coming with us. You're spending a night in jail for J6." And it was crazy because they wouldn't tell me the charges until they got us to the jail. When I got to the jail, he showed me the charges. And mind you, everything I explained, from the raids with agents with guns in your faces, like straight up, like trying to, like you're running guns into your own house. They came in hard, to the Quiet Skies, to then 4 agents and 4 airport police officers there to take you away for jail that night. There were 4 misdemeanors. 4 misdemeanors for all of that. And it just blew my mind. When I sat there, I looked at the guy, I go, "Are you guys kidding me?" I'm like, wow, you guys are terrible, man. Like, you're doing all this. Where I lived. You could have easily called me. I would have turned myself in. We could have gone through the process there, but no, I have to go through the song and dance. I actually came to find out within my records that it was the state of California that pushed them to come after me this hard. So,
yeah. And for what, 71 seconds in the Capitol?
71 seconds, yeah. 71 seconds in the doorway of the Capitol. Like, I don't even know if I count that as in the Capitol. I mean, geez, I think the UPS guy spent more time in my house when I was signing for my package a couple days ago than I did in there. Wow. And when a riot cop. So I have the footage is on my X. So anyone wants to go watch that, you can see what exactly I did for those 71 seconds, including talking to a cop to my left who was called Selfie Cop. We actually deposed him. So if we went to trial, he was going to be there. And responding when a cop in riot gear came up and was like, "Hey, we need you guys to go back the other way." I'm like, "Okay, sir, we're being reasonable. We're going to do that." And I turned back and relayed that same directive to the people standing behind me. And then we turned and left. And I saw a bunch of cops that were sitting on the wall, just chilling inside the hallway. So I don't know. I remember the footage of 9/11, and I've read about Pearl Harbor, and it didn't look anything like that with these cops just hanging out against the wall, chilling. And then, so they came after me for all that. And, I said I went not guilty. So it has been costing a lot. We've had a lot of help from people out there donating. I think one of the reasons, and whistleblower Steve Friend told me that the punishment is the process is the punishment as well. So the reason why we reached out to the judge to move the date back, because we're like, it's the day after inauguration. He says day 1. They're like, it's not official. I still getting charged by my lawyer. So I still have, I have like $20,000 left over. If anyone wants to help, defend Siaka.com right there. But it's like the kind of thing, it's like they want to break you because these are just misdemeanors. So misdemeanors usually are just like traffic tickets. You can pay them and you're done. They want to break you. They want to bury you. They want to make sure your life is hard to live. They want your fees to go up. And if you don't do that, they'll put you in jail if you just go guilty and put you in jail for 4 to 6 months or whatever. Or have you signed a plea deal that said Trump made you do it? I know many people who signed their plea deals early on to say Trump made me do it. And it breaks their heart to this day. So, these people were moving very it was very gross and heartbreaking to see that our country had fallen so far. And just so glad that Trump and who he has in there now, and they can call it whatever they want, as Americans, as overall. And I think everyone, even if you're on the other side, there needs to be restitution and retribution, because these people just wait in the shadow. Evil waits, evil's patient. They'll just do this again. So we brought up Lord of the Rings. Like Sauron took a long time to come back after he was defeated the first time to the last time. So people need to see that your Adam Schiffs, your Merrick Garland, your the agents that came after grandmas, people who are nonviolent with ARs in their faces, grabbing my godsons by the arm, like they need to see these people, be held accountable.
Yeah.
And the government needs to, because I personally think it was entrapment. There are FBI agents there, not just the 23 informants they tell you about. There are literally active agents there. I know for a fact. I'm actually going to send you a buddy's name, Mark Ibrahim, who was a DEA agent there at the time, who they tried to bury with 20 years. I'll let him tell the story, but he has knowledge of FBI agents there. There are agents active in the crowd. So we were entrapped. We are owed by our government for people, what they've done to people's homes and their lives. And, that's I just pray that comes.
Yeah. And I'm with you there. And for some, I'm glad there's a big difference in what you just mentioned, that there's no charge on the record because the charges were dropped. But for those that were charged, I know that's been difficult. There's been some where the judges were not honoring the pardons. Nick Searcy's covered this on his X account along with I think Julie, I forget her name, Julie Kelly, I think her name is.
Julie Kelly.
So
yep,
she's
Julie
also
Kelly.
covered some of this. But I think even more controversial to me, and not surprising actually, was what happened over the weekend with CPAC, with the whole J6ers, some of them being kicked out.
I didn't know exactly the details on that, because everywhere I looked, they just said J6 are getting kicked out. I didn't see the details.
I had to jump into the streams. So Jake Lang was live streaming.
Right. I know he got.
So I think about 4 hours was one of his live streams. So there was a moment where he was kicked out. It was day one. He was being kicked out. It's like, why? And there was no explanation given to him other than that they weren't welcome there, which almost made no sense, because there were some J6ers with Steve Bannon the next day that were on his live stream. So I don't know what happened. But that very day, Alex Stone, or I believe that's his name. He's the nephew of Roger Stone. He had a booth next to this other podcaster that he didn't name drop. So I was looking for that particular podcast. I think I know who it was, but I didn't hear it in the podcast. But Matt Schlapp, who runs CPAC, was on it and saying that yes, he did. He admitted that he kicked out. It was about 20 something J6ers that were kicked out. So it's not just he was singling out Jake Lang or Enrique Tarrio. There was about 26 of them. So that night, after a bunch of other ones signal boosted this story, including Ann Vandersteel and others, Matt Schlapp supposedly that night says, we'll get you guys back, because Jake Lang had bought a booth there. He bought 22 tickets.
Oh, wow.
For a lot of J6ers. So when he went the next day, he live requested a 1 hour stream. It's on his X. So it's him. It's like, it's all going to happen. So he gets stopped and they go back in and check. All right, let's go. We're going to go check with security to find out if you are allowed in. So he's just waiting there. It's like, let's see if they let us in. So then about halfway through the 1 hour stream, I think it's about 34-minute mark, the security comes back. We're not going to let you in. It's like, any explanation? We're just not going to let you in. And that was that. So then they're forced out. And the video clips that were going viral were other people recording Jake Lang being escorted. That was someone else. That someone else was being like manhandled by security, being thrown out. Right. It's like the whole thing just looked ugly. And CPAC tried to put out a PR thing about it. It's like, honestly, that's been going on a lot at CPAC for years, banning conservatives that are conservatives because they don't toe the line. I never liked the Schlapps. I'm going on the record. I've said it before. I don't care what connections I burn or I don't get because of that. I got to hold everyone accountable, including my side. So I've seen this time and again, so it didn't surprise me, but it does speak to the larger problem here that for some J6ers, the road to a normal life is still a long ways off. You in your case having to dig yourself out of that debt to pay. And for those that can, defensiaco.com. For those listening and watching, all the links will be available in the show notes to accompany this episode at theundersegovia.com. But then you have other J6ers who couldn't afford to fight this. That's why they took the plea deals.
Right.
And now
Right.
they got this label on them despite the pardon. What you're saying about accountability and justice for you guys, it's a long road.
See, and this is why that's an example, right? And I've never been to CPAC, and people ask me every year the last couple of years, "Are you going?" I was like, "No, I just don't think about it, to be honest with you." But I've been to America Fest for the last 3 years, and to me, America Fest is the direction that people should focus on the party going. To me, CPAC is still a lot more corporate, right? So like the corporate Republicans, and not necessarily conservative or Christian. And I think when you start to, that's a place to go. You get to meet people. You play the game. I think a lot of times we all have to understand who's around us, because it is a big tent. But before it was a big tent, it was definitely still those things. And I would still rather go to America Fest than go to CPAC. And invite it, that's fine. But you start to put your attention, your energy towards this other thing. The market that's why free market exists. The market will have to change. So people in CPAC would have to change if you start putting pressure, or if you start to show, hey, this is where we actually really want to be, because we're accepted, we're actually loved, our open arms, whereas opposed to this place that is still playing that game and can't read the damn room.
Yeah.
Like to treat individuals like that, especially somebody who bought a booth, it's like, yo, dude, I don't know what you guys are trying to do, what you're saying, but you're actually showing yourself in a way that's fine. You show yourself, and, sunlight is the best disinfectant. Again, get organized the groups together, and you start a campaign. You start showing who's who, but you also come with solutions. We need to be more this way than that way, not just don't be that way.
Yeah.
I think with conservatives, we get caught up in just don't do that. But what can we do? Give the solution that makes more sense than keep following the same type of apparatus. So I think that, I actually hope that a lot of people get, the restitution off this and put themselves in the position that whether it is still at CPAC or they decide that they can just start their own, because the this corporatism that has been happening in our politics is hit a big snag. And look, big money's always going to be in politics. It's just we support, instead of sending your money to Amazon. We always the statement like, stop giving your money to people that hate you. Use products like Public Square instead, because that they, from a value standpoint, they're in the same direction that you're going. So start looking for people, individuals, and events that for your values. Not just because you're going to be able to see President Trump or whatever. For your values, it makes sense. Yeah. And so I think once you start to do that, it's not a quick fix. It's not something that'll happen overnight, but it's something that eventually you'll see. Like we see Disney is starting to turn around. Why? Because they're losing a bunch of money in their stupid shows. Yeah. So it's going to come around by 2026, 27. They're going to be like, all right, here, try this movie, but we have to start realizing the power that we do have as the consumers, as the ones they want to, because CPAC is only CPAC because it's legitimized by the people. Just like America Fest. It's only America Fest in a way it is because it's legitimized by the people. As soon as the people stop engaging, then no one's going to care anymore. So, instead of just arguing and being upset that, to me, it's like, I'm not surprised that corporate CPAC wasn't friendly to J6ers. Like, you're surprised, not surprised, right? You're like, yeah, but it's, come on, he pardoned, leave him alone. But then it's like, well, who are you dealing with? You're like, okay, I get it. So we should start to go, look, just don't engage, but yet create or support something else that does, so that people have some place to go and they're not just sitting there at home pissed off, because you don't want that. That is just, then people start to give up.
Yeah, exactly. And it also speaks to the condition of the Republican Party. Very similar things can be said about the Republican Party, but yeah. And
tell you the truth, the left is fractured too. Mm-hmm. The left is fractured. Here's the difference. The left is fractured just like the right has some fractures, but we won. So like people are looking to kind of fill in the space of being part of a winning side. Like that's just what people do. Yeah. The left, though, they've lost and they still holding on to their crazy ass ideas. So it's like, I don't see them winning anything national for a long time, and they're still doubling down. So I'm like, look, guys, we have an opportunity. There's a time now. This is why don't just be screaming at the grass toppers in the Republican Party. Start to build something strong, because people are looking for some place to go still.
Yeah.
and you be the one that, be that answer that they're looking for. Don't just be a negative to be negative because you're hurt about what happened at the say CPAC, right? Be like, oh, CPAC suck, cool, great, we got something else we're doing now, guys, and it's called this. And
and
so
because we talked about comic books, I know some people have called it, oh, look, this team that Trump has assembled for his cabinet, it's like the Avengers. Like, no, it's the Justice League, because it's in the name.
Yeah, it's in the name, man. Come on, get it together. It's in there. That's funny. That's good.
Yeah,
that's good.
And it's DC too, so I'll always take that.
Fair enough. I get it. He's like, look, we brought it full circle. We brought it full circle back to comics, from Christ to comics to comics again.
I love doing that.
Or comics to Christ to comics.
So I got a couple of things to you that I want to say off the air, but for everybody else, because we'll leave it for them. Where can they follow you or stay up to date with your stuff?
Yeah, so if you follow me on Instagram, you see it right there. It is Siaka_Massaquoi. If you go to X, it's _Siaka Massaquoi. And again, if you can help out, we have about 20,000 left. So go to defendsiaka.com, or if you look at Gibson Go, just type in Siaka in your searches and it'll come up, and anything helps. I know the prayers help as well. And we thank you so much. My wife and I and my family thank you so much for anything you can do.
Awesome. And as still a Californian, I'm disappointed to see you go. But you probably, I don't know if you know this yet, but announced that they're going to be moving their headquarters to Nashville too, which makes no sense, but I totally get it.
No, I did hear it because my wife started dancing. She's a Laguna girl. So she was like, I miss In-N-Out. And then like literally a month later, I'm like, babe, they're moving their headquarters here. She's like, yeah. I'm like, I looked at her, I go, you're welcome. I did it. No.
Oh, man. Yeah.
But yes, In-N-Out coming here. It's like, hey guys, turn it around. You turn it around. California is still a beautiful place. People will show back up. So get out there, vote, get involved. If the Republican parties around you aren't moving the way you want to, great. Just focus on your neighborhood. Focus on your right, what you can touch. And that's usually your neighbors. So
local elections matter the most. So
yes, amen.
So don't hang up yet. But even for everybody else, Siaka, this has been an absolute pleasure, man. We got to do this again sometime.
Yes, it was good times.